Hey guys, it's Joe here. Let's get sloppy with it. So, I thought it would be interesting to actually read Ethan Klein's complaints against each of his victims, I guess you could call them. And I've downloaded these complaints. I want to start out by saying I'm not a legal expert. I probably have more legal knowledge than the average person. I do have a law degree, but it's obviously in UK law, which doesn't apply to a lot of the American stuff. So I don't expect like super in-depth legal analysis, but I thought it would be funny and interesting to read the complaints, and I've read a few lawsuits, so I can skip over some of the fluffy stuff. They do tend to be extremely wordy, um, and they have a lot of sort of not irrelevant, but stuff that's not relevant for most people and is basically procedural stuff that needs to be there for it to be official and everything. Um, so let's get into it. I'm going to do Kaceytron first. I think I'm going to have to split this up into three videos at least because these are long documents. This is the Kaceytron one. This is 52 pages. It's the shortest of the three. 64 pages here. This is Frogan's one, and I believe this is the longest one, 80 pages for the Denims one. So let's get into the Kaceytron one. We'll zoom in a little bit here. TED Entertainment Inc., that's Ethan Klein's company, versus Casey Caverness, aka Kaceytron, complaint for copyright infringement. They've used a very unflattering picture of her here, and it's titled Kaceytron, She Smoked More Than She Spoke. So immediately, having read a few UK lawsuits or complaints, I think we call them something different in the UK. Having read a few of those, it immediately strikes me that and I haven't seen this document properly, but I've seen what Ethan has said about it on his video where he announced that he'd be suing these people. So I was immediately struck by like the levity and the jokiness and the sort of flowery language. Um, to me, in the UK, you really don't see that in court documents. Everything's very serious. There's not really any space for humor. I suspect most judges would frown upon you trying to inject humor into your lawsuits, but maybe it's different in the United States. I mean, it probably is. Ethan's had experiences with court cases, so either he's doing it just to like clown on these people in a legal manner, which is admittedly funny. I just hope that it won't hurt his case here. I mean, in the UK, I don't think they would appreciate this kind of stuff. Okay, so they've got some quotes from her here. These are ones that Ethan covered in his video. So she's saying a lot of people have been wanting to watch this without necessarily supporting Ethan Klein, so we're going to watch it. So that's a very damning statement legally because it indicates her creating a market substitute for his product, which is like specifically diverting people, ergo money, away from Ethan. And then she's just saying she's confused because she's probably stoned watching it. That's page 2. Okay, introduction. This lawsuit is about ending the practice of lazy reaction videos that copy entire copyrighted works and purposefully siphon views and revenue away from the original. Over 7 years ago, the owners of plaintiff TED Entertainment, Ethan and Hilla Klein, established the legal standard for fair use reaction videos in Hosinzadeh v. Klein 276. That's just the case reference there. As a genre, reaction videos vary widely in terms of purpose, structure, and the extent to which they rely on potential copyrighted material. Reaction videos like the Klein video that intersperse short segments of another's work with criticism and commentary constitute fair use. So this case, I haven't read this case. I know roughly about it from hearing people talk about it, but this was a previous case where somebody sued Ethan Klein for watching their content, and he managed, it was kind of like a landmark case for the internet, um, where he managed to beat the odds and get a legal definition of fair use, which meant that his criticism and commentary of their copyrighted material did not constitute copyright infringement. So he's kind of almost made the law, Ethan Klein, or changed the law, I guess, in this previous case. And now he's on the other end of it, having sort of made a huge win for reaction content and everything like that. You could say free speech if you wanted to. He's now on the other end of it, suing people for using his material because he's saying that their reaction is a breach of fair use. I just need to sneeze here, sorry. Sorry about that. I had a sneeze coming. Okay, so then he says, in contrast, reaction videos that are more akin to a group viewing session do not constitute fair use. This case concerns a group viewing session hosted by the defendant Kaceytron. Kaceytron specifically intended her group viewing session to siphon the maximum number of views and revenue away from TEI, that's Ethan's company, copyrighted work. Content nuke Hassan Piker, the nuke. Kaceytron successfully achieved her objective by releasing her group viewing session of the nuke minutes after its official release and showing it in its entirety. She greatly profited from the group viewing session through advertising revenue, donations, and paid subscriptions. So Ethan's going to be asking her to hand over all the money she got from that, no doubt. 3. The moderators of the H3 Snark subreddit knew that her viewing session would serve as an alternative to watching the nuke on Ethan's YouTube channel. Kaceytron has a long and well-documented history of copyright infringement. The mods were aware of this fact. If you don't know, H3 Snark, it's a Reddit page where it's basically a gang of people who hate Ethan Klein and try to troll him and harass him. And honestly, I don't care if people want to get together in a hug box and hate on someone. That's like their free speech right, and they can probably derive some kind of joy and fellowship from that. But the whole reason that this issue has come to a head is because this Reddit page got way out of hand to the point where they were calling CPS, Child Protective Services, on Ethan's kids, saying that the kids were being abused and mistreated and stuff, and it ended up with CPS turning up at his house threatening to take his kids away. So this is why Ethan's so angry with this page, and these 3 women who he's suing all supported the CPS call on their streams after the fact. So there's definitely an element of malice to this lawsuit that might be something that they can incorporate into their defense, although legally it's not super relevant. It might help them out a little bit in some way. Okay, so the mods were aware of this fact. As such, they successfully promoted, scrolling down, the group viewing session on the H3 Snark subreddit as a substitute for the nuke. They're using the word substitute there because it's like market substitute is one of the pillars of fair use, or the pillars of non-fair use, I guess. Like most lazy reaction videos, again, this word lazy, you wouldn't find it in British lawsuits. It's just like, it's just a bit extra. I think it's funny, obviously. But it's kind of like they're cramming as much pettiness as they can into this. I appreciate that. I just don't know if it is going to help them legally. I guess US courts are different. I'm probably going to keep saying this throughout reading this document. Alright, so like most lazy reaction videos, the group viewing session is almost devoid of critical commentary. Instead, she uses her group viewing session as an opportunity to engage in public degeneracy, such as continuously smoking copious quantities of cannabis, resulting in Kaceytron becoming so obliterated. Again, this word would not be in a British lawsuit. Becoming so obliterated that instead of providing any commentary, she stares blankly at her computer. Even more striking, she peppers her group viewing session with the sounds of loud gastrointestinal emissions. I guess that's farts. Due to her highly inebriated state, she watched long, unadulterated portions of the nuke for minutes on end without interruption. On the rare occasion that she was coherent, her remarks were brief, surface level, repetitive, and or self-admittedly uninformed. Her poverty of commentary fails to provide new information, new aesthetics, new insights, or understandings on the nuke. So that is reference to a previous lawsuit of Andy Warhol versus Goldsmith. I guess that was about intellectual property as well. So that would probably mean that I haven't read this previous case, but they're quoting from it. So presumably this new information, new aesthetics, new insights or understandings is some kind of legal test for whether something is transformative. Kaceytron's unauthorized, highly commercial exploitation of the nuke is a quintessential example of copyright infringement, i.e. using copyrighted content to get attention and avoid the drudgery in working up something fresh. And again, they're quoting another case here from 1994, Campbell v. Acuff Rose Music. So this again would be some kind of quote that was pivotal to the case where they sort of made a determination whether something was fair use or not. Perhaps back then it wouldn't have been called fair use. This lawsuit is to hold Kaceytron accountable for her infringement of the nuke, and the H3 Snark mods accountable for their contributory infringement. So I just want to talk about the H3 Snark mods. Like, when you are suing someone, you need to know their names. And to me, this sort of vague title of the H3 Snark mods, I don't know how that's going to incorporate into the lawsuit. They basically need to identify these people. To me, this seems like it's not going to go anywhere, this part about the mods. They need to like identify them and show exactly what they've done, and it needs to be like an individual action, not a sort of group action. So presumably the H3 Snark moderators are like unpaid hobbyists, I guess. I would presume that they don't have a particular level of accountability for this stuff, but let's read on and see how he handles it. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of this because this is just about the venue, the jurisdiction. That's basically just where they're having the case and the law, the local law that's going to apply, because all the laws are different from state to state. Parties, they've got Kaceytron, Ethan Klein's company. Okay, so the H3 Snark mods consist of does, numbers 1 to 10. Does means John Doe, unnamed individual. The true names and exact locations are presently unknown, which therefore sues said Doe defendants by such fictitious names and will seek leave to amend this complaint to show their true names and exact locations when those have been ascertained. Below is a summary of what is known about does 1 to 6. Okay, so this is kind of addressing what I was just talking about, where they need to sort of identify these people. Okay, so doe 1, this is actually really interesting to me. Doe 1 is a female, founder of H3 Snark and one of the H3 Snark's mods. She previously used the name as Empic Dealer. Her last post, blah blah blah. Other handles, Yogi Bear and Paris Hilton. Alright, like they know very little about this person. I'm not very impressed by this. Doe number 2 is female, resides in Canada, and is the head moderator of the Snark mods. And they've got some of her usernames here: Roman P, Right Salamander, Cav2, Snark Mod Team 3, Wrong Salamander, Right Salamander, Pure Press, Kitchen Mukbang Star, Sally, and Alaturn. So they know her Discord handles, I guess. Interesting that they're both female, these top two haters. Doe number 3 began as a user of H3 Snark and was subsequently made a mod. Used the username Sarah Horn Jewett, and then later used the name Jewett Sarah Horn. Doe number 4's Discord name is Roswallen. Doe number 5 is male and goes by the name Tony. Username Frompu. Doe number 6 was made an H3 Snark mod. Discord name is No Reception. So I'm just wondering if all of these Doe characters are going to be implicated in each of the lawsuits. This will probably be like a copy and pasted section into each. Alright, well that's a very interesting section to me, but I don't find it super relevant to the lawsuit. They know so little about these people. I guess they want to get the lawsuit going and then sort of find out the identities of these people later, and that's like something that they're working on. Okay, so this is the background of TEI. I'm going to skim over this. It's H3 Productions, Ethan and Hiller, now both channels belong to TEI. In 2016, they were sued for copyright infringement, defamation, and misrepresentation under the US Code 17 by Matt Hossainzadeh, aka Matt Hoss, the bald guy, Matt Hoss. So this is all referencing the previous lawsuit they had where they were the defendants. Okay, I just want to read this part. So, to ensure any of the unlicensed copyright content qualified as fair use, Ethan Klein and Hiller formulated and refined best practices based on the principles from the previously mentioned case, which include, so this will be important, 1. Whenever feasible, pre-screening the original work and outlining the criticism and commentary before the broadcast. I don't really understand what that means. Pre-screening the original. Oh, I guess watching it before you comment on it. I wonder, I don't see how that's super relevant. 2. Ensuring the commentary was directly related to the style and or substance of the original work. 3. Only broadcasting the portion of the original work that would be subject to critique. 4. Pausing the original work frequently to provide critique. And 5. Ensuring that the duration of commentary was substantially longer than the portion of the original work show immediately before. I think that's meant to be shown immediately before the commentary. As I understand it, the safe thing to do is show nothing more than 4-second clips if you want to fall into fair use. Just a side note there. Alright, back to Kaceytron. Kaceytron, flame bait fixture. She's been streaming for over a decade. She's amassed 540,000 followers on Twitch. Wow, I'm shocked by that. I thought she was a lot smaller than that. Everyone says that there's a lot of bots on Twitch though. Okay, she's not known for her intellectual acumen or analytic prowess. Another dig there. Despite desperately wanting to be taken seriously by the alt-left online commentary community, Kaceytron's claim to fame is her public acts of degeneracy and brazen acts of copyright infringement. Her stream comprises of her watching unlicensed third-party content while smoking copious quantities of cannabis and impersonating unintentionally the cartoon characters Beavis and Butthead. Again, this is just, it's funny, but it's not relevant to the case to say that. And to me, I think that would look, if I was a judge, I do have a good sense of humor, but like, there's really no need for this. As like a civilian, I can just laugh at this and say, haha, that's really petty. But man, if I was a judge, I would think this was like a waste of words and also like just needlessly antagonistic. Sometimes Kaceytron's not even conscious while streaming. Most infamous example occurred in 2023 during a subathon. She streamed entire episodes of the TV show Kitchen Nightmares while passed out from her overzealous consumption of cannabis. Like, stuff like this, I think is fine. I think it's relevant to mention that she's a stoner and that she kind of, because I think that's kind of relevant to her not commenting properly on the video. She's kind of just getting stoned, which is something she could do in her free time, and the weed is like affecting her ability to analyze and engage with the stuff she's watching. So that to me is not over the line. Okay, Kaceytron was temporarily banned on Twitch 2025 due to chronic copyright infringement. When the ban became public, she posted on Twitter, "I'll do it again." Background of H3 Snark. Okay, again, to me this doesn't seem super relevant if you can't name the people. I think if it was me, I wouldn't have bothered with this Snark stuff, and I would have like saved it for a later lawsuit maybe, if I can find out their information, because if you can't identify these people, all of this is just a waste of words, really. It's kind of like needless extra law, but I don't know what's going on in Ethan's head. Like, maybe they're very close to identifying these people, or they're just like confirming the last few details. Anyway, I'm going to read it because it's interesting to me. So Snark is a part of genre of message boards. Snark subreddits comprise of fallen fans of a particular entertainer. Over time, there's been numerous Snark subreddits regarding Ethan Klein and the Kleins. Many have been banned from Reddit for violating its terms of service. H3 Snark was created in 2023 by Doe Number One, who was a fanatical Trisha Paytas fan. Trisha Paytas is someone who Ethan used to have a show with, but they had beef and everything fell apart and now they're enemies. Okay, blah blah blah. This is just about the Snark mods. H3 Snark became a haven for fallen fans of Ethan and Hiller. The average viewer would move on with their lives after becoming disinterested in a podcast. H3 Snark's fallen fans religiously watch Ethan's content with orgiastic hatred. That's a nice word. I presume it means like something sexual, but you know what? Let's check it. This is a bit of a side note here, but of or resembling an orgy, orgiastic dancing. I like that word. I'm gonna incorporate that into my vocabulary. Alright, they watch it with orgiastic hatred. Snark enables these deranged and chronically unemployed fallen fans. Oh my god. Chronically unemployed. That's such like internet language. Yeah, I'm shocked by some of this. They share their perverse pleasure of hate watching Ethan's content with others by providing infringing clips and links to Ethan's content. Beginning of the fall of 2023, H3 Snark experienced a surge of users who were fans of Leftovers. This was a show that Ethan did with Hassan about leftist politics. Man, when those two made a show together, I swear I knew it was going to end like this. Because like Hassan is such a loose cannon, and Ethan obviously didn't know how sort of like radical he was and how extreme he was. And Ethan's quite a reasonable guy, really. Like, he's not super far left to the point where he supports like terrorists and violence, and he's quite a reasonable guy. He's far left probably, or at least medium left. Anyway, I knew this was going to happen when they started the show. So they had a show called Leftovers, co-hosted by Ethan and the most prominent alt-left streamer on Twitch, Hassan Piker, aka Hassan Abi. September 14th, 2023, they debated various issues concerning China and Taiwan, genocide of the Uyghurs. Ethan pushed back on Hassan's pro-China positions. Several leftover fans who had an ecclesiastical parasocial relationship with Hassan flocked to H3 Snark because they felt Ethan was critiquing them personally. Ecclesiastical is a nice word as well. That basically means religious, like sort of religious ritual-esque. Okay, the surge of the new users to the Snark page exploded after October 7th, 2023. The Kleins are dual Israeli-American citizens. Hiller was born and raised in Israel, where she served as a secretary during her mandatory conscription into the IDF, Israeli Defense Force. While both Ethan and Hiller are highly supportive of Palestinian self-determination and extremely critical of Israel and its government, the Kleins support a two-state solution as the best interim solution to the conflict. Okay. Sorry, I need to sneeze again here, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I have got some hay fever at the moment. It's middle of summer here, a lot of pollen in the air. Anyway, in the wake of October 7th, Hassan emerged as the modern incarnation of the Grand Mufti Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Man, to me, this stuff is really not very relevant to the complaint. The complaint's about copyright with Kaceytron. Like, I don't understand why they. I know he's being petty and he wants to like get in digs at all the people he hates, but man, save the judge some time. Like, this is hilarious to me and it's very interesting to me, but I think the average judge in a civil court concerning copyright, they don't want to read like years of law about a frickin' Reddit page. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of this on a personal level. It's hilarious, but in a legal sense, and they've got all references to these YouTube videos. It's very well referenced, but really, this is not at all, especially if they can't identify the snark moderators. Okay, so they're comparing Hassan to Al Husseini, who's, I guess, some kind of, I was going to say terrorist leader, but let me double check this. They haven't said who he is yet. I'm presuming he's like, okay, Al Husseini worked with the Nazis and advocated the annihilation of Jews. So I guess he was like the leader of one of the Arab countries in World War II and was very anti-Jew, as many of these people are. Hassan advocates the annihilation of all Zionists. Most Jews in the United States are Zionists, basically. And they've got a picture of Al Husseini with Hitler. This is really, if I was a judge, this would piss me off, to be honest. I'm not saying I am anywhere near close to being a judge. Of course, I'm not. And I don't have massive legal knowledge. I've never worked as a lawyer or anything. But from what I know, the limited amount that I know from studying and like my own research, if I was a judge, this stuff would piss me off big time. Maybe if they get a Jewish judge, they'll be like more open and sympathetic to this. I'm not trying to be racist there. It's just a fact. Maybe they'll see it as more relevant. And then Al Husseini with Himmler, like this is just a waste of pages to me. I like Ethan Klein a lot. I think he's hilarious. I think he's probably right to do these lawsuits, but to me, this stuff is all just like extra fluff. And these are long documents. Like the one of the biggest concerns in court is like saving time. Um, this is why people settle cases so much because it costs you a lot of money to be in court. And not only the cost of you being in court and your opponent being in court, but the judges themselves often have huge, like, waiting lists of trials. And in the UK, we have a huge problem of it. It's the same in the United States, as far as I know. There's a huge problem of having enough time in court to address all the cases, which is often why law enforcement will try and get you to take a plea deal because it saves time in court, which means the judges can get through more stuff. Anyway, that's just my feeling. Okay, they have quotes from Al Husseini, again, completely irrelevant to the case. Okay, October 12th, 2023, the last episode of Leftovers is aired. It was a discussion between Ethan and Hassan regarding Israel and Palestine and the events of October 7th. During the discussion, Ethan expressed support, to the Palestinian cause and empathy for their suffering, condemning Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. At the same time, Ethan attempted to humanize the victims of October 7th, hoping Hassan would find empathy and mutual understanding that could begin to heal the divide. Hassan was unpersuaded, and the relationship began to deteriorate. In the aftermath of the falling out between Ethan and Hassan, H3 Snark became a radioactive hub of fallen fans of the Kleins. It became a focal point for spreading vicious lies, conspiracy theories, and hallucinatory misrepresentations. Alright, the rampant copyright infringement of H3 Snark. Despite their hatred, they had an insatiable appetite for TEI content. However, they didn't want them to receive any views or advertising revenue. As a result, Snark became a locus of copyright infringement. One method employed to consume TEI content was to share links of TEI content on YouTube. That's YouTube spelt with Y-E-W, a website that provides unauthorized access to YouTube videos and publicly performs them, which constitutes copyright infringement. See Hunley v. Instagram, 2023. YouTube had a particular appeal to snark mods and snark users because videos watched on YouTube, just checking it's still recording, videos watched on YouTube does not result in a view or advertising revenue to go to original YouTube. The mods conducted live chats when TEI content was broadcast live. Alright, I'm impressed with this stuff. We're getting back to relevant stuff that's showing a breach of copyright infringement instead of talking about World War II and Hitler and the law of Hassan and Ethan. By the way, Hassan's not even, he's not a defendant in these lawsuits. It's not super relevant where these people came from or anything like that or who they're fans of. Okay, so here they have, okay, they're spamming the live chat with YouTube links to TEI copyrighted content. I'm just looking at this image. I don't really use Reddit, but I guess they're making like a chat room so they can watch things on the fake YouTube site and talk amongst themselves. Okay, so the relevant thing here is these are actually being posted by the Snark mod team. So it's not just like random users on the Snark, it's actually the mod team who should have a little bit more responsibility. Okay, they've just got a bunch of screenshots here. Okay, this is more just, we encourage folks to watch on YouTube since it doesn't play ads or contribute to their view counts. So this is just screenshots from the Snark Discord, I guess. This is Sarah Horn-Jewett, one of the does who they know a little bit about. Okay, this is just more of the same really, just screenshots of these people. So the relevant legal part here is they're deliberately trying to take revenue from Ethan Klein or deprive him of revenue, and they're providing a market alternative, market substitute I think it's called. Alright, next section. Ethan Klein and Hiller issued takedown notices for infringing posts and comments on HV Snark. So they began to fight back against the copyright infringement by pursuing notices pursuant to 17 USC section 512. TEI was extremely surgical about which H3 Snark posts would be subject to DMCA takedowns, relying on the most pertinent fair use decisions. They issued DMCA takedowns only for posts or comments that uploaded an entire TEI episode onto Reddit, particularly paywalled content. Comments that provided a YouTube link, as in YEW. I'll just start calling that fake YouTube, I guess. Posts or 3 posts that contained a clip of TEI content with a descriptive, non-critical title, and the comments were locked by H3 Snark mods, or there were no comments after several hours. I'm not quite sure what that means. And then this is just details of their previous DMCA takedowns. Not super interested in the specifics of this. I'll take their word for it that it's true. I'm sure it is. Yeah, it's basically just lists of their DMCA takedowns against this snark subreddit. I think I can scroll through all of this. It's just basically lists of the dates and the titles of the content that was DMCA takedowned. I'm just skim reading this stuff. So this is basically just saying that it seems like Reddit kind of ignored their DMCA takedowns, or at least some of them. They're basically saying that they do not believe the appeal was filed by the actual copyright owner. After Ethan became vocal about pursuing claims against H3 Snark, the mods began deleting their posts, comments, and accounts en masse to perpetuate their false narrative and conceal their copyright infringement, along with other illegal activities such as organized harassment and defamation. Okay, in 5th March 2025, a YouTuber by the name of The Law posted a video admitting he was a former H3 Snark user who came to reject the obsessive and destructive behavior he saw taking over the subreddit. He documented the acts of copyright infringement and other unlawful content. Video documents 1. The mods deleted post after Ethan announced plans to pursue legal action against them. How they abused the live chat feature on Reddit to promote harassment and defamatory statements. How they use sock puppet accounts. That basically means like a second account that's anonymous. And those were also deleted. How the Snark mods purposefully lied about Ethan's DMCA takedowns to conceal their copyright infringement and obfuscate their intent to siphon views and ad revenue away from him. Okay. Ethan creates and registers the nuke. I'm just using Ethan sometimes instead of TEI because it's basically the same thing. Okay, Ethan and Hiller's concern reached a fever pitch over Hassan radicalizing his audience with propaganda from Ansarallah, aka the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And other Twitch streamers like Kaceytron who parrot Hassan, blah blah blah. And this is him now criticizing Hassan and his cronies for, I'll quote, hijacking the necessary and important distinction of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Gaza war. They employed genocidal rhetoric that painted all Israelis as subhuman, warranting annihilation. The term Zionist lost all meaning and quickly mutated into a thinly veiled dog whistle for Jews. To combat this tsunami of hateful rhetoric, Ethan and Hiller, through TEI, created content Nuke Hassan Piker. So, to me, this, again, it's interesting to me, but it's I feel it's super irrelevant to this lawsuit, and I'm a little bit worried that it might piss off a judge, basically. Okay, we'll continue. The nuke was written, shot, and edited from December 2024 through January 2025. 4 days before it was released, TEI submitted its application to register the nuke with the United States Copyright Office. They received the deposit copy. It's registered, basically. Okay, this is interesting. The deposit copy varied slightly from the broadcast version. First, the deposit copy did not contain the conclusion and sponsor segment that was contained in the broadcast version. On a side note here, I wonder if this will affect the validity of their claim if the copyrighted version is different from the broadcast version. It depends how significantly it is different. That could hurt their case. Okay, they're just saying how it's different. Minor visual edits were made. Ultimately, all of the deposit copy was incorporated into the broadcast version. Okay, so I guess here they're saying the deposit copy was basically slightly less than the broadcast version, but everything in the deposit copy was incorporated. The Nuke is a tragicomic documentary criticizing Assange and Twitch. I'm gonna skim over this. They're just talking about the structure of the video. Okay. To me, again, okay, I guess maybe this is more relevant. I was about to say it's not super relevant, but this is actually detailing the content of the copyrighted material which they're claiming over. So this actually is relevant, but to me it's not very interesting. I've watched the content new video, I know what's in it, I know what it's about. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you watch it. I think it's over an hour long. It's quite entertaining in my opinion. And it's a pretty damning coverage of Hassan Piker's worst moments, I would say. Anyway, we're going to skim through this. You can go and watch the video, or you can pause and read it yourself if you want, but this is just a sort of synopsis of what's in the video. Blah, blah, blah. I do actually still wonder whether it's relevant to include all this in the lawsuit. The Hezbollah section, man, they've devoted a lot of pages to doing a play-by-play of Ethan's video. The Twitch section. That's Ethan criticizing Dan Clancy, who's the CEO of Twitch, for allowing terrorists on his platform. Okay. I'm just scrolling through all this because it's not super relevant to what I'm talking about. Okay, that's all. And now we're back to the actual content of the lawsuit. So H3 Snark promotes Kaceytron as a substitute to watching the nuke. Okay. Users of H3 Snark anticipated the nuke with religious fervor to defend their proverbial Grand Mufti from criticism. Again, very petty, flowery language that I personally wouldn't use myself in a legal document, but there you go. It is funny. Okay. However, they did not want to watch the authorized version because it would give money to Ethan, basically. H3 Snark mods knew that there was a huge demand to watch the nuke through unauthorized channels and promoted group viewing sessions of the nuke as follows. And then these are just going to be examples of the times and places and evidence of these people doing this. Exhibit F. So they've got one on January 30th, they've got one on January 31st. And it's basically the H3 Snark mods promoting Kaceytron's group viewing session of the nuke. Okay, so now they're talking about the law of fair use. So, codified in Section 107 of the Copyright Act, the statute sets 4 non-exclusive factors courts consider to evaluate fair use. Non-exclusive means, does that mean you need all 4 of them, or you need at least 2 of them? I'm not sure. So, anyway, number 1, the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of a commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. So just piggybacking on that, all of these people are streamers who get ad revenue and donations. So I think that constitutes commercial nature use. It's definitely not non-profit educational purposes. 2 is the nature of the copyrighted work. I believe that there's some distinction between fictional and non-fictional content, and I think generally fictional content has a higher standard of copyright because non-fictional stuff is more likely to be in the public interest, etc. 3, the amount and sustainability of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. So that's basically just how much, if it's a video, it's how much of the video you show and how much you show at a time without injecting your own content or commentary. And 4 is the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. So that's basically, does your use of the copyrighted work potentially have a negative impact on the marketability of it for the original creator? So in other words, does your supposed fair use of their content deprive them of money or value that they would get from their own use of it, I guess. So this is the market substitute thing, where if you're deliberately siphoning people away from watching it, you are depriving them of money and views and everything like that. Okay, yeah, now they're talking about what I was just talking about, which is the problem of substitution. In other words, whether the new work supersedes or supplants the original, and they're referencing the Warhol case there. And then they're just talking about some of the quotes from this case which support their argument. And then they're talking about transformativeness. Again, they're referencing Warhol. So I guess Warhol is like the American landmark IP case for this kind of thing. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, you can easily make something transformative, and I think the safe way to do it is to do 4 seconds of copyrighted content and then a break with some of your own interjection. Okay, now they're talking about another quote from Warhol, and they're talking about whether it has a distinct purpose that furthers the goal of copyright, namely to promote the science and the arts without diminishing the incentive to create. So that's talking about having a balance between protecting copyright and allowing people creativity to create their own things from what you've made. And that's all about sort of balancing IP protection with free speech, really. Critical book review illustrates how secondary use must be justified both in the broad and the narrow sense. Again, referencing Warhol. This is all quite thick, dry legal language here. Referencing McGuckin here. I don't know that case myself, but they're talking about a loose topical connection with the original work, which is problematic. Another case referenced here, Penguin Random House v. Colting. Oops. Okay, if you click on it, it takes you to the case. That's interesting. Okay, I've lost my place. That sucks. I think I was around. Okay, this is just the. Okay, we were in this part. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, here, yeah, this is where I was. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, we were here. Don't want to click that again. So, to be considered transformative criticism, the aspects of a work that reproduce another's protected expression must be in service of commentary on that work. It is not enough for a part of a work to have a transformative purpose. When the use of copyrighted work is not consistently transformative, referencing an Elvis Presley case, for example, when clips are played without much interruption, if any, or used in excess of the benign purpose. The use of voiceovers, headlines, or captions, or wholesale copying sprinkled with written commentary fails to sufficiently transform a copyrighted work under the first fair use factor, referencing the case of Monge and Elvis Presley. When a copyrighted work is used simply to illustrate what that work already depicts, the infringer adds no further purpose or different character, and copyright law treats the infringer as free riding on the inherent value of the original work, referencing McGuckin. The first fair use factor does not favor any user who wants to reach different buyers in different markets communing different products. That's from Warhol. I think I'm going to skip through some of this. This is all quite thick, heavy, referencing other cases and defining what is fair use. I'll read this one because this references the previous Ethan Klein case. That's difficult to say. Okay, in Husseinzadeh, the court found that the first fair use factor favored fair use because the Klein video was quintessential criticism and comment on the Hoss video, namely consistent mockery of Matt Hoss's performance, dialogue, and plot lines. The Klein video was consistently transformative by interspersing relatively short segments of the Hoss video with long segments of the Klein's commentary. Okay, this is talking about the nature of the work. Referencing Monge and McGuckin. Husseinzadeh case, the Matt Hoss case. Yeah, this is all just arguments as to what is fair use and how Kaceytron presumably is not fair use and Ethan Klein is fair use. Okay, looking at some other cases here, at Authors Guild v Google. Alright, now we've got a new section. Kaceytron's group viewing session failed to make fair use of the nuke. So this is really, or I'm hoping it's going to be a really strong argument as to how Kaceytron didn't make fair use. Okay, so they're calling it a group viewing session as a substitute for the original. That's important. Sorry, I accidentally scrolled down there. Yeah, so this is important. It's a substitute for the original. This is one of the things that's going to be really hard to disprove from Kaceytron's standpoint, I think, and it is literally part of the law about fair use where you can't do things as a substitute. And then they're saying the evidence for this is she begins her group viewing session 13 minutes after the nuke was released. She did not pre-screen it to formulate her opinions before the broadcast. She wanted to siphon as many viewers as possible away from the content to herself. In other words, her priority was to personally benefit from providing a substitute for the original, and any commentary and criticism was a mere afterthought. Immediately prior to watching the nuke, Kaceytron states, okay, I know this is going to be damning. So this is a quote from Kaceytron. I know a lot of people have been wanting to watch this without necessarily supporting Ethan Klein, so we're going to watch it. That is legally a really tough thing for her to get out of here. I don't know how she's going to wiggle out of this one. This demonstrates that Kaceytron knew her audience wanted a substitute for the nuke, and she was more than happy to provide one. Her group viewing session suffers from a poverty of any commentary on general, blah blah blah. She makes 5 short comments. One example of such is, I don't know anything about this stuff. Here we go, right. So now he cares about genocide. I mean, it's true, America is bad. What's wrong with him saying that it's true? And then they've got timestamps for this. Kaceytron admits that she has no idea about world politics, geopolitical politics, or anything like that. In other words, she admits she is not competent to provide meaningful commentary on the substance of the nuke. She repeatedly states she needs to watch the nuke again with Mike's analysis. Okay, that's Mike from PA. If you're familiar with that guy, he's a bit of a cringe bread tuber, kind of a broke simp, sort of Hassan Orbiter kind of guy. Oh my god, this would not fly in British law. So his name's Mike Bayer, Mike from PA. Bayer is a failed Nepo baby who is a prolific purveyor of misinformation to the public for over the decade. Completely irrelevant, very funny to me personally, but just like ancillary, irrelevant, petty, insulting jabs at someone who's not really relevant to the situation at all. I just don't see this helping his case at all, and I'm worried stuff like this will harm the case. Like I said earlier, if I was a judge and I was reading this, I would think this was unprofessional, and I think it's a waste of my precious time to read this. Like, I get that this case is about YouTube drama, but you don't need to literally put like internet slang like failed Nepo baby about someone who's not even relevant to the case. To me, a better approach would be just like stick to the facts, make it snappy, make it short, get the important stuff in. Like, we've read some great content in this document. We've read some really like snappy stuff that's just not going to be easy for the defendants to wiggle out from. But then you've got random stuff like this, and I keep saying this is funny to me as a civilian, but if I was a judge or a lawyer reading this, it would piss me off. Like, why are you putting that in there apart from to be petty? And generally, in the UK at least, judges have a very, very dim view of people sort of using the court to grandstand or be spiteful or anything like that. Alright, so now that, oh my god, they're doing paragraphs about Mike from PA, who's not even relevant. They're saying he changed from Republican to Democrat. He had a privileged upbringing, blah blah blah. I'm just gonna skim over this. They're talking about how he stated he was a lawyer when he actually was not. Again, completely irrelevant to the case. He's not a defendant in this case. He's literally someone who was mentioned once by Kaceytron in a live stream. And then they're saying he grew more radical. And this is about Kaceytron smoking weed. That, to me, that is very relevant to the case. So that's fine. They're talking about her farting on stream. If anything, that might be something which adds to the content and makes it fair use. So personally, I wouldn't have mentioned that myself. Okay, and then they're talking about her being in a small corner of the screen. Okay, this is important. So during the stream, she solicited paid subscriptions, donations, and bits, a different form of currency on Twitch. Whenever she receives a donation or paid subscription, an announcement would play over the nuke. Indeed, Kaceytron received numerous paid subscriptions and donations. Further, she received advertising revenue from her group viewing session of the nuke. This is just, again, saying that it's not fair use because she barely commented. Okay, yeah, and this is what they're saying is the most important fair use factor of that she tried and succeeded to provide a market substitute for the nuke for the reasons set forth below. So to me, this is really the kill shot of their argument, and it's the most, they've got the most damning evidence against Kaceytron in this regard. Okay, so this is just repeating some of the evidence for it. It's a quote from Kaceytron. I know a lot of people have been wanting to watch this without necessarily supporting Ethan Klein. Showing the nuke in its entirety with minimal commentary. Starting the group viewing session only 13 minutes after the nuke was released. And then they're saying that the H3 snark mods are responsible for inducement twice by directing people to Kaceytron's stream. Her conduct did become widespread. Several other members of Hassan's waiting room. Again, I don't think they need to use this language. I don't think it's going to impress a judge. I would have said something like, I don't know, I would have come up with a more professional sounding name for them, like even just something like Hassan fans or Hassan's groupies, I guess you could have called them. That doesn't sound very professional either, but anyway. Okay, and then we get to the claim for relief. So it's saying that Ethan Klein is the sole owner of the copyrights. This is all just procedural stuff. Ethan did not grant any license, authorization, or consent to Kaceytron to view it. It was an unauthorized reproduction, public performance, and derivative work of the nuke in violation of TEI's rights set forth in 17 U.S.C. Section 106. Due to Kaceytron's acts of copyright infringement, Ethan has suffered damages in an amount to be established at trial. So they're not yet stating the amount that they're asking for. They're going to say that they're going to determine this in trial. So again, Ethan said that he thinks that these people are going to settle with him, in which case it won't go to trial. So maybe it's a good thing to not waste time on determining the damages if they're not sure that it's going to go to trial yet. Okay, so Kaceytron obtained profits they would not have realized but for her infringement of the TEI copyrights in the nuke. So that's basically saying all the donations and subscriptions and stuff she got during that stream, she would not have had if it wasn't for Ethan's content. And it says here that the acts of copyright infringement were willful, intentional, malicious, and or taken with the reckless disregard for Ethan's rights. This is about the H3 snark mods. Again, damages will be established at trial. And this is the summary of it all, the prayer for relief, they call it. So TEI prays for judgment against Kaceytron and the H3 snark mods collectively defendants as followed. That Ethan be awarded defendants' profits plus TEI's losses attributable to defendants' infringements of the nuke, the exact sum to be proven at the time of trial, or if elected, statutory damages in the amount of $150,000 as available under 17 USC Section 504. So I do know this little nugget of US law in their, I believe it's in their Copyright Act. Basically, it's statutory damages of 150,000 per video. I'm not sure how that would apply to multiple defendants, whether they'd each have to pay that, but I believe that's either the minimum amount or the maximum amount per video. It's probably not the maximum. I'll have to look into that further, but anyway, that's the sort of guideline figure that's written in the US law. And he's also asking for reasonable attorney's fees and costs under 17 U.S.C. Section 505. This is another nugget that I know. So basically, if you've registered something with copyright before you publish it, you're entitled to recover your attorney's fees if you have to litigate over the copyright infringement. So that was another clever thing he did by copywriting this before he released it. Ethan will be awarded pre-judgment interest as allowed by law, and Ethan will be awarded such further relief as the court deems proper. So that's just any extra awards that the court wants to give him. They're asking for a jury trial. In the UK, it's unusual for civil cases to have a jury trial. I'm not sure if that's going to benefit them or not. And then it's saying Kansas, Missouri. Okay, well that's the end of the document. That was fun to read. That took longer than I expected. How long have I been recording here? I don't actually know. Anyway, it's a long video. I'm gonna have to leave the other videos are gonna have to be separate. The ones on Denims and what's her name, Frogan. But I will go through those, and presumably a lot of this stuff about the snark mods is going to be copy and pasted, and probably a lot of other stuff like the plot of the content nuke and the play-by-play of that. I presume that's all going to be copy and pasted from one lawsuit to another, so that might make it a bit quicker. to cover these other lawsuits. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I did enjoy it, even though it was a long haul, and I'll see you in the next video.